All right, we are live. Hello, Facebook. I'm Chrisella Herzog. I'm the CEO of Humble Hustle Studios, and this is our very first Facebook Live. We're really excited to be starting this series on the Lunch and Learn and covering how you can own your digital marketing. Because what we find is that a lot of business owners get completely overwhelmed by all the different options for digital marketing out there, and we want to cover in this live series just little different things, tips, tricks, different things that are happening in the market for business owners to know so they can get a better idea of what their digital marketing strategy should be. So that's what we're going to be covering today, and we're going to be getting started here in just a couple minutes. Or just a minute or so, going to give some people some time to log on. I hope you've all packed your lunch and, well, at least you're sitting at your desk watching something and learning something. I usually end up eating lunch at my desk and while I'm answering emails, so at least you get to tune in and learn something. All right, let's get started. Like I said, I'm Chrisella Herzog, and if you're just joining us, I'm the CEO of Humble Hustle Studios, and this is a new Facebook Live series that we're trying out so that we can help business owners learn what is what's happening in the world of digital marketing and help them kind of better figure out what some strategies are out there that are available to business owners so that you can get a better idea of what direction you should be taking your digital marketing strategies. So today, first, what you can expect from this. These live videos are going to be about 20 to 30 minutes long. Eventually, we might expand some of them to be up to an hour long, but your time is precious, and we don't want to be sitting here on a Facebook Live all day just chatting about different things. So that's what we're going to be talking about, 20 to 30 minutes. And if you can't stay with us for any reason, then these will all be recorded and available on our Facebook page at Humble and Hustle Studios. And we'll also be downloading them and uploading them to our YouTube page as well. So tune in, whether it's watching it live or watching the replay. We hope that you are learning something interesting from this. And we hope to get your feedback on different topics that we can cover in the future that would be of use to you in understanding your digital marketing strategy. Great. So let's get started on what we're going to be talking about today. Today we're going to be talking about podcasting. Podcasting is one of those things that is still kind of niche. It's been around for a long time, like almost 20 years. But at the same time, businesses don't really think about how they can integrate podcasting into their digital marketing strategy. And that's a real shame because podcasting can be a really powerful marketing tool. So today we're going to be talking about, I've got a little thing here. Look at this. 4 reasons to use your podcast to market your business. Can you all see that? There we go. I'll go like that. All right, so 4 reasons to use a podcast to market your business. And there's a reason that I wanted to talk about this today. As you might know, the Humble and Hustle Studios is the marketing partner for the Utah Podcast Summit, which is coming up on June 8th. So, gosh, like a little under 3 weeks now. So it's going to be in Sandy, Utah. And if you're tuning in remotely and are interested in joining the Podcast Summit, there are remote web access tickets available. And I will include a link in the comments in a little bit for you to get access to a discount code for you to attend the Podcast Summit live. So we hope to see you there. It will be a lot of fun. So the Podcast Summit is going to be covering things like how to start a podcast, how to market your podcast, all those sorts of things. But I wanted to talk about how a business can think about a podcast as a marketing strategy in and of itself. And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. This 4 reasons to use a podcast or to use a podcast to market your business. So you hear a lot about content marketing strategies. You need to write the blogs. You need to, have the captions with the Instagram photos. You need to have the videos and all that sort of stuff. And so podcasting is a variation of a content marketing strategy. But I would argue that it's the first step you should take in a content marketing strategy. And we'll go over why in just a minute. All right. So 4 reasons why you should use a podcast to market your business. First is customer education. Customer education. All right. So if you have a business where you might be doing something that is new to the market, or you are doing something that requires, you have a different process from everything else that's out there, or something that is ingrained in how consumers operate, then you have a process of where you're going to need to be doing customer education along the way. And this can be as simple as, trying to explain to somebody, um, you know, why they should purchase your product instead of your competitors. Or it could be something as complicated as, hey, this is a new technology and this is why you should integrate it. So something that can be, right at the bleeding edge, or just something that can help differentiate you in the market. And one of the things that you need to do with that is you need to have some sort of content marketing strategy to help tell that story of your business and help explain why this is important, why you're different, and how to use this. And the easiest way to do this is through a podcast, because you can sit down and over a series of episodes, tell the story, talk about this, interview your clients, interview your customers, interview people on your team, interview people who are industry leaders, talk about all these different things. And then you don't need, and then you can take all of that later on and convert it to a blog. So this is why I say you should start with a podcast first. Sit down, have these authentic conversations, then transcribe the podcast and start listening to, transcribe it. And then you can take portions of that and create blog posts. Or you can take portions of that and create the Instagram post or the Facebook post or the LinkedIn posts. You can cut that content up and create content for a couple of weeks based on one podcast episode, especially if that podcast episode is really, really meaty and has a lot of really good information in it. So, and then you have kind of this evergreen sort of content where, if there is something in the industry that changes or comes up, you can share that podcast episode again, and people can go back and listen to it again and again and again. And instead of trying to, get through these algorithms on social media, or to understand or try to break through with SEO, that sort of thing, a podcast, while it helps you do all of that sort of stuff, it's evergreen, and it also meets consumers and customers where they are. So you can't really go to the gym and read a blog post. You can't read a blog post while you're commuting to work in the car or something like that. But what you can do is you can listen to a podcast. And so you're right there in your customer's ears, really intimate relationship right there, right in your customer's ears. And you're helping to educate them about what is different about your company, that sort of thing. Now, you don't know, I want to caution you here with this. You don't want this to be like corporate PR speak, that sort of thing. Your content does need to be interesting. And that's why I'm saying you need to tell a story with your podcast. Make this interesting, help people learn what they're doing. But people especially if you're a B2B company, people in your industry want to learn these different things. And if you're a B2C company, then kind of talk about talk about the problems that are out there, the complications that are out there, and then talk about how your business is solving those. So that's one thing to do there. Another thing that you can do is, if you have questions that your customers are always asking, like if you have a frequently asked questions page, do a blog post for each one of those questions. And not a blog post, a podcast. Do a podcast for each one of those questions. And then go through, and when somebody asks that question the next time, boom, you've got a podcast episode recorded. You can just send them the link to listen to it. And if you're able to spend the time in the podcast to really dive into that, well, then not only you're going to answer that question, you're probably going to give them a lot of new information to really dig into and get them hooked. So when you are trying to figure out this customer education point, one suggestion I would start with is have to be mindful of the camera. This is where you start with it. The 5 W's plus how. And this is who, what, where, when, why, and how. If you go through, make a list of these, the 5 W's and the how, and go through and answer it. Who? Who are you? Who are your customers? Who are you interviewing? What? What are you talking about? What does your company do? What problems are you solving? What are your customers doing here? What are your customers looking for? What problems do your customers have? Where, when, those, that can be something like with the podcast or with an event, or, where can they find you? When is this problem coming up? When do you, like, if you're talking about customer challenges, when do you see this problem come up, and where can your customers go to find answers to it, that sort of thing. Why should your customers be listening to you? Why are you different? Why if they have a problem, should they be coming to you to find the solution to their problems? And then how do you solve these challenges that your customers face? How do you fix these problems? How do you do this? How are you different from the rest of the people in your industry? So go through, make a list of all the answers to these questions. And what you will find going through that is almost each one of those questions can be its own podcast episode. And right there, you've got a whole bunch of content to talk about on your podcast. All right. The second, oops, what is going on with my pen here? The second reason you should start a podcast is you reach new audiences. You reach new audiences. So when you have a podcast, one of the more common things that will happen is you're going to be invited to go on to other podcasts to talk. It's a very common way of cross-promoting podcasts, of marketing different podcasts. And if you get invited to go on other podcasts, honestly, you should be asking to go on other podcasts. It's a great way to market your business. It's a great way to get your business out there. Even if you don't have a podcast, you should be asking to go on other podcasts. But if you have your own podcast, this becomes a way of reaching new audiences. Not only are you the founder of this company, but you also have this podcast that you're the host of, where people can go and listen to you and learn more about your company. So the next thing is that if you are thinking about becoming a public speaker, and if you are an entrepreneur and you're running a business, you should be thinking about becoming a public speaker of some kind, because you're going to be doing a lot of it. You have to be the face of your business. You have to be the one marketing your business. This is going to be a great way to help get that bit of a speaker reel or that credibility behind you, so that you will be invited to conferences, or that if you go pitch a conference to go speak at it, then you'll be accepted to go speak at it, because you have this credibility, you have this podcast, and people can go listen to it, be like, oh yes, this person is a good speaker, we are going to invite them on stage. Because I'll tell you, as a person who plans events, it's always a risk. If you don't know how good of a person is on stage or in talking, you don't know what you're in for. And having a podcast is a really great way to help kind of alleviate that risk, so people can hear what you are like on stage, what you're like in speaking. Are you personable? You're just talking on monotone, like that sort of thing. Like, it can really help you kind of build up that speaker credibility, so you can reach larger and larger audiences. And finally, a podcast can help you really practice your pitch. So if you're a business owner, you are constantly pitching. You're pitching your business, you're pitching for loans, you're pitching for investors, you're pitching customers or potential clients. You're constantly pitching. And if you can start a podcast where you are sitting down week after week, telling your story, talking about your business, and really honing in on what the core message of your business is, your pitch is going to get much better. And then you're going to be able to reach bigger audiences with more capital or more customers, or, what have you. All right. The third reason to start a business, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, third reason to use a podcast to market your business is that it's going to help you end your overwhelm. So if you're sitting down each week and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to write all these blog posts, or oh my gosh, I have to have this social media strategy. I don't even know what I'm going to post. I don't know what I'm going to put up. Well, if you have a podcast, then you have all this content to choose from. So as I mentioned earlier back in the customer education section, that if you have this blog post, you can get it transcribed and then start pulling parts of that transcript and creating creating blog posts, creating Instagram posts, creating LinkedIn posts. All of a sudden, you have this wealth of material, this wealth of content that all you have to do is go back through it and pick and choose what is going to work for you this week. You have this podcast where you've been talking about this story, talking about this issue, talking about industry trends. And all you have to do now is sit there and pull from all of that to create your editorial calendar for the next couple of weeks or the next even month or so. Just all based on things that you've already talked about in your podcast, because you've already done the thought work. There's no reason to replicate that. Just adapt it. The other reason, I almost forgot this. The other reason that you can also use a podcast to kind of end your overwhelm is if you are just getting started out with a podcast, and okay, maybe you don't really know what to talk about. That's totally fine. You know what you can do? Interview people. Interview other people in your industry. It doesn't matter if they're famous. It doesn't matter if they have massive businesses. Talk to other people. And this is one way that you can make it so that, okay, you don't have to do all the mental work yourself. You don't have to sit there on a podcast week after week and talk into a microphone all alone. You can talk with other people and get other ideas from other people. And then again, you transcribe it. You turn it into a blog post. Hey, I sat down with this person and this is what we talked about. Here are, 3 insights from my conversation with X person in our industry. And then, and this is really important too, because when you are interviewing other people in your field, it gives you credibility. It gives it shows that you have these connections, you have these relationships in your business that you can reach out and somebody can take that will actually spend the time to come and talk with you. That's credibility for you. That shows that, you actually are a player in your industry. And then too, like if you do get somebody who is, well known in their field or considered an expert or a thought leader or that sort of thing, then when they come on your podcast to talk to your audience, then you are borrowing a bit of their credibility and adding it to your own credibility. So if you're at a point where you've been, trying to get, this goes back to the reach new audiences thing. If you've been trying to reach more people, if you've been trying to show that, hey, you know what you're talking about sort of thing in your business, bringing people on your podcast to talk with you, it's a great way to not only, make it so that you don't have to spend all your time thinking up the content yourself, but it also builds you up and helps you reach new audiences, because if you have somebody on your show to interview them, you should absolutely be asking that person that you interviewed to share it with their audiences. And there you go, you're massively expanding to new audiences. All right, now the fourth reason why you should use a podcast to market your business. I'm sorry, my pen is the ink is kind of going out. So I hope you can see this. The fourth reason to use a podcast to market your business is to present yourself as a leader in your field. If you are sitting down week after week talking about industry issues, you know a lot about this industry. If you are using your podcast to educate your customers on new things that are happening in your industry, whether it's, your technology that's on the bleeding edge and how does this technology work, or you're talking about, a new process, a new way of doing things in your business, then you are presenting, you're an expert, you're presenting a new way of operating, and you are leading the way forward in your industry. And I know a lot of people don't like the phrase thought leadership, and I get it. It's cliche, and too many people who shouldn't be using it or use it. It's the same with the word guru. Like, they're awful terms, honestly. But what you are doing really is it's all about, using your voice, getting out there, taking the risk to put yourself out there in front of the crowd and say, we can do things differently. And this is how. And then showing people how, through your company, through your processes, through your inventions, showing people how to do things differently and leading the way in that. And a podcast is a really great way to start doing that if you don't have the clout to necessarily get on stage yet. And, most of us are there, but most of us still have these great ideas that can change industries. So, use a podcast to start talking about these things, to start reaching these new audiences and getting in front of new people. And what you'll find is that people will really resonate with this message. Think about some of the people like, I'm thinking about a couple people in women's fields, like Marie Forleo, or Danielle Laporte, or if you start thinking in other industries, Richard Branson or Bill Gates. Think of people like that. They're leaders in their fields. They talk about things where you can do things differently. You need that platform too, and a podcast is a way to create that platform and start building that audience and that following. And that's a lot of B2C stuff, but it also works within B2B fields, because 96% of people who purchase B2B products, they want to hear about industry updates. They want this new information. And what they want more than anything is they want to hear it from people. Nobody likes to go on the internet and sit there talking to a brand. Nobody wants to go on there and have, carry on a conversation with a business page. People want to talk to people. People want to talk to business. People want to talk to peers. It's part of network. They want to build relationships. And so a podcast is one way of doing that. It might feel like it's talking in one direction, but if you bring on other people, you bring on, for interviews, you post the podcast on your LinkedIn page, and you start use it as a starting point to start a conversation, then you'll find that people start coming to you for, with questions and hoping that you will have the answer, or that you can talk about the answer or talk about the solution on your podcast. So really quickly, those are the 4 points. One thing I want to touch on really quickly, or just, mention before you go, oh yeah, podcasting, I'm going to jump right in. Podcasting is a long-term strategy. It's not going to work for you in the short term. If you jump into it thinking that you're going to see immediate returns, you're going to be really disappointed. And so don't do that. It's a long-term strategy. It takes time for an audience to build up, for listeners to build up. If you are consistent with it, then you will find that it's going to happen a lot faster than you might initially think. It kind of starts slow and then builds up. If you think of that upward, that J curve there. So, and it's the same with if you start advertising with podcasts or using the podcast for advertising, that sort of thing. It's a long-term strategy. It's not something that you're putting out there expecting people to come by immediately, because that won't happen. It takes time for people to process that and think about it before they actually move down your marketing funnel and become a client. And so that's why one thing that we helped develop with the podcast summit, the Utah Podcast Summit, is this podcast canvas. I hope that focuses there. Okay, yeah. This podcast canvas, because what we find is a lot of people start a podcast and they start fading out after about 7 to 15 episodes, because doing a podcast isn't easy. You have to really be committed to it. You have to really understand why you're doing it. You have to understand what you want out of it, and you have to be committed to it and consistent with it. And so we created this, helped to create this podcast canvas to kind of help you plan out and think through what are the costs, what is success, and really what do you want this podcast to look like. So if you would like a copy of that canvas, just drop a link below in the comments of this video, and I will make sure to message that to you. All right, everyone. I will also be posting a link to tickets to the Utah Podcast Summit with a discount for you. I hope that you will join us there, or at least, join us through the web stream. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. We'll also be sending out a poll so we can kind of understand, like, what are you gonna, like, what topics do you want to hear from us in the future? Do you want to hear about event marketing? Do you want to hear about time management? Do you want to hear about Facebook ads? Facebook's going to be changing soon, so maybe that's something we'll talk about. But anyway, we'll be sending out a poll. We hope that you'll take that and kind of let us know what you're looking for, and so to help us create future Lunch and Learn live videos like this. All right, everyone, thank you for tuning in and take care.